September of 2015, staunch never-Trumper and friend of this show, David French, his wife, and their 7-year-old daughter have been victims of online harassment from the alt-right. The stream of threatening images and violence and death picked up shortly after French publicly considered and then declined an independent bid for the White House. That's when the alt-right trolls lost it. In his recent National Review article, French details the threats that have become an all-too-common response to anyone who publicly opposes Trump and the bigoted alt-righters who support him. French writes, "I saw images of my daughter's face in gas chambers with a smiling Trump in a Nazi uniform preparing to press a button and kill her. I saw her face photoshopped into images of slaves. The alt-right unleashed on my wife, Nancy, claiming that she had slept with black men while I was deployed to Iraq," unquote. And to this day, the harassment and direct threats are relentless. And joining me now is David French of the National Review. David, it's good to see you again. I'm sorry that it's in these circumstances. I read your article yesterday, which is called "The Price I've Paid for Opposing Donald Trump." And it was one of the most chilling things that I have read in a really, really long time. When about did the hatred against you start? And if you could just, in brief terms, describe some of what you've dealt with, you and your family.
Right. I mean, it started in September of last year when I criticized Ann Coulter, who's one of Trump's big allies, for what I knew to be, I didn't suspect, I knew to be heavily coded racial language stoking up this alt-right, which is a collection of white nationalists, white supremacists who've latched onto the Donald Trump movement. And so when I called her out, my Twitter feed began to melt down with these horribly graphic racist images that you just described. And then, but if it was just Twitter, and if it was just me, I wouldn't write about it. It just kept getting worse and worse and worse. They found my wife's blog. They began to bombard the comments section of my wife's blog with the most horrifically graphic images of African-American men being murdered and killed. Then later on, the email death threats came. And then the most disturbing thing that happened was just in the last few weeks when my wife was actually on a phone call with her father when somebody broke into the phone call itself, spewing profanities at both of them, talking about Donald Trump. And to this moment, to this day, we don't know how that happened. We've contacted law enforcement. They're looking into it. So it was a campaign of harassment and intimidation that wasn't confined just to Twitter. It extended into our daily lives. And it's not just us. As I detail in the piece, I go through person after person after person who has opposed Donald Trump and has confronted what we've confronted, and sometimes even worse.
Yeah, your daughter is adopted, who is black, and that's why you described that they were going after her in racial terms. John McCain's son was actually in your Twitter feed, commiserating with you about the hate that he's received. His wife is African American, and this is the son of war hero John McCain, who's also being attacked in similar fashion. One of the features, however, despite the anti-black piece of it, the anti-woman part of it, there is a feature of the alt-right that is very fixated on Jewish people. The most attacked Jewish journalists have actually been compiled by the Anti-Defamation League. It shows who are the journalists who have been the most trolled. It's Ben Shapiro, who resigned from Breitbart because Breitbart did not support its own reporter, Michelle Williams, after she was manhandled allegedly by Corey Lewandowski. It's Jeffrey Goldberg, who everyone knows, Sally Cohn, who's over at CNN, Jonah Goldberg, Jake Tapper, who's at CNN, Wolf Blitzer, and it goes on and on and on. What do you make of that aspect of it? We just had an instance where seemingly ordinary Trump supporters used a German word, Lügenpresse, to describe the media. What is with this Nazification of the Trump movement, or did it pre-exist Trump?
It was lurking out there before Trump. But what's really disturbing is it's the Trump movement. And I say Trump movement because I don't have evidence that Donald Trump himself is stoking this. But the Trump movement really put it on steroids. And then Breitbart.com became a place that was one of the most trafficked websites on the conservative side of the aisle, publishing apologetic articles justifying the alt-right, some of its writers stoking the alt-right quite intentionally. And then, when you try to talk to some of his supporters about it, you will say that this is happening, it's racist, it is anti-Semitic, and they'll say, oh, well, you're just part of the progressive media, you're just labeling everybody who disagrees with you as racist. Well, no. When you're talking about images of my African-American daughter in slave fields or in a gas chamber. What do you call that but racist? It's thoroughly and completely racist. And they're capitalizing on this anti-political correctness side of the Trump movement to really try to stoke and also to excuse some of the most vile communications. And again, if it was just Twitter, I wouldn't be writing about this. Twitter's becoming a cesspool, but it's leaking outside of Twitter. You talk to these people, these journalists, many of them have had to install security systems in their homes. Some of them are carrying handguns for the first time in their lives. This has put real fear into people, and it has to be exposed. It has to be condemned.
And, you know, one of the ways in which Breitbart.com, and you are correct, this does predate Donald Trump, the alt-right and also the American neo-Nazi movement, people like David Duke have glommed on to the Trump candidacy. They're very enthusiastic about him, but they were already there before he started running for president. This Pepe the Frog sort of meme that is attached to them. Donald Trump Jr. actually has retweeted this. We're showing here, Pepe the Frog used to be this sort of fun-loving little character. He's been co-opted as a symbol of hate. It's actually been officially labeled a symbol of hate by the Anti-Defamation League. And there you see a retweet. It's actually on Instagram that Donald Trump Jr. actually sent out. What do you make of the fact that Donald Trump's son appears to be the source of his retweets of things from the alt-right?
Well, Donald Trump has retweeted the alt-right multiple times, including a Twitter account called White Genocide, which is one of these terms the alt-right likes to throw around. So it's Trump Jr., it's Donald Trump. You know, they're unapologetic about virtually everything. And I don't think they in the least bit shed a single tear that any of their critics have been going through this nightmarish experience. So, you know, I don't want to impute to them beyond the evidence, but the evidence that is already there, that they have right in the middle of their campaign, Steve Bannon, who is the head of Breitbart, that they have retweeted these white supremacist accounts. I mean, that's incredibly disturbing on its own terms. And again, you know, it's just a mistake to keep emphasizing Twitter. And a lot of people came at me saying, oh, you're crying because people said mean things to you on the internet. Well, no, people broke into phone calls at our house.
Yeah.
You know, so we're talking about something that is putting a lot of people in legitimate fear for their physical safety because they have opposed Donald Trump, and there is an entire movement. It's not just one or two cranks out there. We're talking about blocking hundreds and hundreds of Twitter accounts. We're talking about potential connection that the New York Times has uncovered from some of these trolling accounts back to Russia. It's a mess, and it's horrible, and it's put people through a terrible experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we are certainly sorry that you have gone through this terrible experience, David. We wish you and your family the best. Hopefully you will be safe. We really appreciate you being here, and hopefully the Republican Party will take some active steps to root this part of the base of Donald Trump out of the party. We hope they'll step up and do that. David French, thank you so much.